NXT's transition from a game show to a new developmental territory for WWE was a huge change. The developmental philosophy underwent a significant overhaul in favor of this new style, which allowed for the fans to learn about the superstars of the future. FCW wasn't broadcasted to a wider audience like NXT. NXT compared to FCW was much tighter in all areas, and if somebody was pushed hard, there's a better chance of that person receiving the same treatment on the main roster. Of course, that's not guaranteed. A lot of bright talent emerged through Full Sail University. Some of these guys had made their mark internationally and before walking through the doors of NXT. Pac was renamed Adrian Neville. Prince Devitt, who was now Finn Balor, but there was still a heavy emphasis on homegrown talent. And in terms of charisma, there was not many on the level of Enzo Amore. Amore was a lifelong wrestling fan who stumbled upon a huge opportunity that came right to his door and he was prepared. So long story short, Amore had been training at this gym since he was a teenager. He was training with Joe DeFranco at his namesake gym, and this was around 2010 or 11 the way Enzo spoke about him. Joe tells him, "Hey, I got a phone call from Paul Levesque. He wants me to train him." They trained for about a year, and Enzo decides to send Joe a link of some promos he cut. You can find these on YouTube. He displayed a lot of charisma and character. A man born and bred in Jersey taking offense to the likes of Paulie D, Mike the Situation, and Snooki. It's the most 2010-11 thing you'll see. What's crazy about this clip is that this man's charisma was nothing compared to what he was 5 years later. Enzo Amore had an incredible base to start on. Joe showed it to Triple H and gave Enzo a tryout. He managed to sign around September of 2012 and became Eric Anthony. On the other side emerged Colin Cassidy. Unlike the realist in the room, Big Cass had been with WWE for a while, and ironically, he met Enzo at a basketball court 10 years earlier. Both men remembered each other from that time period, and here they were in the same place at the same time in 2013. Enzo's charisma and energy turned him into a can't-miss prospect, and in May of 2013, he made his debut. Thanks to Ridge for sponsoring another video. The Ridge is currently celebrating its 10-year anniversary, and with 10 years of great reviews and iconic wallets, Ridge is obsessed with making durable, space-saving gear you'll actually use. Stock up with a minimalist wallet, key case, ring, or watch for a more organized everyday. Now, the reason why I personally like the Ridge is efficiency and effectiveness. A regular wallet will feel unnecessary if you touch one of these. Why? Because everything is stored in place, and all you gotta do is push from underneath, and all of your cards come out. Same with the key case. I carry this every day and it's so simple, and sometimes simple is what we need. Plus, I don't have to worry about the keys disappearing from my pocket. They're all in one simple place. The designs on both are sleek and cool, and with over 30 colors and styles including carbon fiber and burnt titanium and over 50,000 5-star reviews, the Ridge is the right choice for you. The Ridge team is so confident that you'll like it that they'll let you test drive it for 99 days. You can send it back for a full refund if you don't love it. Get the best offer with the link ridge.com/premier. That's ridge.com/premier. And right now you can save up to 40% through March 26th. From his first entrance, this man was electric, calling the roster Fugazis. He got his ass kicked by Mason Ryan, but I'm sure most remember the talk coming from Enzo Amore. Soon after, Colin Cassidy debuted against the very same man, and to the surprise of nobody, he lost as well. They realized they share a common bond in losing to the same guy and challenged him to a handicap match. And pairing both men was the best choice. They bounced off of each other, bounced off the mat during this match. But that said, Enzo Amore was something else here. He said 1 + 1, meathead, equals 3.14. Time to eat your pie. They finally came away with a victory and were off to piss off the NXT roster. Their little promo was slowly being developed, my name is Enzo Amore, the little introduction, and William Regal wondered if Enzo was DDP's love child. Their times as heels disappeared faster than Hardcore Holly's main event push though, and I watched these segments countless times, such as this where they made Sylvester Lefort and Scott Dawson a joke. Sly wanted to recruit them and offered to pay them cash, but they turned it down and were called Jersey Shore wannabes. Sylvester was all about the Benjamins, but at face value was very cheap. This promo though was their best by far up to this point. So both men were frustrated at being denied an NXT title shot by those two. Not to mention Rusev. Big Cass made fun of Scott Dawson for being a terrible mechanic and said that he's fixed to get his teeth knocked down his throat. And Rusev, he broke his mother's heart coming out dressed without shoes. It was a good ass promo and I highly recommend you guys watch it if you haven't. Unfortunately though, the momentum that Enzo and Cass were building was put to a halt after Enzo broke his leg. I have no doubt that their entire NXT run would have been different if they had those 7 months. By the time Enzo returned, Big Cass had become a singles wrestler, and outside of the matches, he wasn't doing much. He was just another guy. Sylvester Lefort once again resumed his story with Cass, and Enzo returned to find his partner being surrounded by Lefort and Marcus Louis. He called them French Fugazis, and along with the fans, called them SAWFT, soft. The reason why the fans connected with Enzo and Cass simply comes down to them being natural. Regardless of how they were positioned on the card, you felt that these guys were real. They were themselves and didn't need to over-exaggerate their characters. Their feud with Lefort and Louis intensified. The heels shaved a part of Enzo's beard, and he wanted to retaliate by bringing in some hair removal cream, and somehow this led to the debut of Carmella. So long story short, she was a hairdresser. Enzo and Cass were there, and they accidentally poured it on a client's dog, which led to her getting fired. But in the moment, the realist in the room had to deal with LaForte. When it came to a head at TakeOver Fatal 4-Way, Enzo and LaForte put their hair on the line. Amore won the match, but it didn't end up being LaForte that lost his hair, it was Louis. Later that night, they ended up discovering him and brought him to the ring where they made a joke out of him. They had bigger issues at the time though because Carmella was pressing them over that situation. She demanded to become a wrestler. Carmella's insistence forced the duo to take her in and train her to become a wrestler. This got to the point where they asked Regal to check it out. They didn't need to beg him, and he straight up gave her a tryout. Now I remember her debut. This was the first full episode of the new NXT I ever watched. She comes out to a Iggy Azalea type beat and destroys Blue Pants. Carmella became an official member of the group and she was a missing piece. You know, she really complimented the group well. But anyways, Enzo and Cass weren't really doing much, but what mattered most is that they were on TV. They were the guys that could make the most out of their time. The team was not the best in-ring, nor were they booked the best, but they were certainly the most popular. However, their time in NXT clearly reached its peak. They weren't going beyond a certain level, but for many, this was a blessing in disguise. Some talent did better on the main roster, and in Enzo and Cass's case, it seemed likely that was about to become a reality. On the April 3rd, 2016 episode of Raw, Enzo and Cass made their main roster debut. This was the Raw after WrestleMania, so everyone was anticipating their debut. Enzo roasted the hell out of the Dudleys, saying they're so ugly. Tears rolled down the back of their heads to avoid their face. He threatened to figure 4 connect Devon's dome, and they were fuming. Amore mentioned Bubba's hairline, and at this point, they couldn't do anything about it. They weren't even mad, they were just sad and disappointed. Cass told them that if they have a problem, they should come into the ring. Nope, they didn't. The duo called them soft, and the crowd was incredible. They were behind their every word, and the hopes everyone had for the team were rising with this one. A great first impression. One notable omission, though, is the lack of Carmella. She was left behind to continue her development, and this turned out to be a blessing in disguise for her, because had she been called up, she would have been stuck to Enzo and Cass. She had to be associated with them, she had to be a part of that breakup storyline, but because she was left in developmental, it allowed her to branch out and become her own character. The team's great start, though, was easily overlooked after Enzo suffered a brutal bump at Payback. The team was facing the Vaudevillains and Enzo's neck rebounded off the ropes. He suffered a concussion and was out for a couple of weeks, but the feeling in the arena at the time was absolute silence. It was bad. It could have been worse, though. To him, this came down to the fact that he did this spot with Aiden English countless times. It was the first time, though, that he did it with Simon Gotch. And it didn't end well. Nonetheless, Enzo returned a couple of weeks later and beat the Dudleys before feuding with the club. This was a huge platform for the tag team because at the same time, AJ Styles and John Cena were feuding. He needed his backup. Their 6-man tag team match at Battleground was probably the team's most memorable match on the main roster. The duo cut an amazing promo making fun of the club and in particular AJ Styles' soccer mom haircut. They won the match with the help of John Cena, and following Battleground, Enzo and Cass were drafted to Raw and immediately started a feud with Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens. Their star power was slowly increasing, and at one point they even main evented Raw with the heels. As always in storyline, Enzo Amore got himself into some trouble though. Cass locked him out of the locker room one night and he was left naked. Somehow he runs into Lana and Rusev called this an embarrassment and challenged him to a match. For Enzo, this was no problem and he continued his remarks in front of Lana and told her that if she wants to see him naked, she should hack his phone like everyone in her country of Russia. Cass implied that Rusev without pants is SAWFT and this guy took a beating. And despite this, he didn't learn his lesson. He told Rusev that his luckiest day coincided with his wife's luckiest day because she learned how Enzo's doing. The man was talking the talk and Rusev was losing it, and Enzo was back to selling. Hey, at least he won by disqualification here. Still the same thing, he got involved in their business after hearing an argument, and after Lana threw a ring, he ended up comforting her, and Cass knew nothing good would come out of this. Rusev got into it with Cass asking for the whereabouts of his wife, and this led to a match. He goes out there, he's ready for a fight, and it turns out Rusev wasn't here. Cass realized that this wasn't going to end well and calls him from a phone, and he doesn't answer. Enzo knew that he wasn't really allowed here, felt uncomfortable about it, but when he wanted to leave, she called him a fool, and Rusev came in. He's like, I'm not into this type of thing, and gets obliterated. That's the story of Enzo Amore. He asks for these type of situations. And as a result of this, he disappeared for about a week. Big Cass tried to avenge him in the meantime. Upon the Certified G's return, it seemed like Cass was the one who got beaten up. At the same time, though, Enzo's actions caused him to attend sensitivity training. His progress at the meeting was positive initially, but then told the woman that if he has some sensitivity problems, she could help him deal with it. And there was Rusev. Even Jinder got involved here. He got ambushed once again, and at this point, it was simple. You either saw Mike in Enzo's hand, or flat on his back. No in between. He was hurting, but if a fight was coming his way, no doubt would he try to hold his own. Despite being medically uncleared, Enzo still made it a mission to piss off Rusev. And Cass was the one fighting his battles, he'd be talking the talk, and Cass would be walking the walk. Both sides traded victories upon Enzo's return, and in the final match, a tornado tag, Enzo wrapped up the feud, beating Rusev, and they were off to focusing on the tag team titles. The build to WrestleMania made it seem likely for the duo to capture the gold, because they were by far the most popular team on Raw, and unlike every other team around, they didn't have a title reign. I think WrestleMania was going to be their time, but a certain tag team returned, and this marked the beginning of the end of the tag team. And then WWE made a crucial decision that led to the end of both men's runs. On the May 22nd, 2017 episode of Raw, Enzo Amore was found attacked. Once he recovered, he didn't have any memory of the perpetrator. Kurt Angle promised to solve the problem, and Big Cass in particular was extremely paranoid at this point. He believed that Corey Graves insinuated he had something to do with Enzo being attacked. This was after Kurt Angle received a message and brought Corey to the back. Later that night, same thing. Enzo was unconscious, and Cass thought it was a revival, but Angle offered his rebuttal. Things settled for a bit, and the duo were set to team up. Cass thought it was insulting that others believed he did it and promised to ensure that it won't happen again, because he's by his side. And he did ensure that Enzo wasn't touched. However, he couldn't say the same for himself. Despite the attack, Enzo went out there and found himself a tag team partner, The Big Show. This only caused Cass to grow more paranoid and alluded to The Big Show being the attacker. Enzo was very thankful of The Big Show making the save for him, but also started asking questions. How could a big guy like Cass get taken down with one blow? Big Show knew that this was his big partner who was talking and called him soft, but this was all going to come to an end. Kurt Angle promised that tonight he was going to reveal who attacked Enzo and Cass. The Raw GM brought out the suspects, The Revival and The Big Show. The Big Show was very upset with Angle accusing him of the attack and said that it's written on their shirts. Why would he attack them from behind? They're soft. Big Cass seemed hell-bent on making Big Show the perpetrator. Then to make matters worse, The Revival seemed clear of any wrongdoing. All of a sudden, Corey Graves interrupted. He offered a rebuttal to Cass's claim of having a lump the size of a baseball bat and said that he never got treated by WWE's medical team. He said that it was the EMTs. Oh, so why'd you wrestle when you weren't medically cleared? Oh, I said I'll never leave Enzo's side. And this is when Corey Graves brought up the security footage. And there it was. Enzo's world was falling apart, and Corey Graves exposed Big Cass as a fraud. Even then, Enzo still wanted to believe there was more to this, and Cass admitted he did it. The man was upset with Enzo. He said that he was annoying, he talks a whole hell of a lot, and just recently he's running his mouth about Conor McGregor. And he put up with him out of pity. He did it because he felt a bit bad for him. The fact that everyone in the locker room hated him, but it all reached a boiling point, and Cass said that it felt good when he attacked them from behind. He called him deadweight, holding him back from rising high in the WWE, and said that Enzo's mouth writes checks that his ass can't cash because Big Cass is behind him. Well, not anymore. And he proceeded to drop him with a boot. Now, the decision to split both men was very controversial. In my opinion, it was doing a disservice to both men because it was going to be a sink or swim type thing, and Enzo already had an anchor on his leg because of his issues backstage. Him being free like this at the moment was not going to end well. Despite his friend turning on him, Enzo Amore felt that he could work on fixing things between the two. I love how Big Cass came out to a theme song that was performed by his former friend. Enzo admitted that he wasn't the best promo. He had the biggest mouth, but their family. What happened to him was in the past, and he admitted that what he saw in Cass last week was passion and emotion. Same coming from him. He was in tears, but once Colin Cassidy responded, he said that last week was a time where he was ashamed. Sure, Enzo's annoying, but he accepts him for who he is. And they're brothers. He apologized for what he did, they hugged, and all was good. But then he proceeded to clothesline him, and this was more heartbreaking than the actual heel turn. He also threatened Corey Graves for exposing him. Shortly afterwards, it was confirmed that Enzo Amore would face his old friend Big Cass at Great Balls of Fire. And this was enough for the certified G to look at this from a different perspective. He said that Cass never had his back and said that whatever he could do at the pay-per-view has been done already to him. So much confidence radiating from him, and he said that confidence is something you can't teach. He said Cass is a 5-word catchphrase that he wrote and responded to the check statement from last week saying, "Nobody in this business goes harder bouncing a check than Enzo Amore." He said that Cass is saying he's where the money's at. Well, don't be surprised next quarter when the next merchandise check comes and it says 0 dimes. Unless he starts wearing a shirt that says Casshole. Man, the wordplay with this guy is ridiculous. He finds ways to turn the smallest thing into a memorable quote. He then compared himself to Tupac, saying he's wearing this bandana, he's an army of one, and shouted that it's all eyes on me. Cass responded to this saying he's all money, but before he could finish, Enzo attacked. About the match at the pay-per-view, it seemed like Enzo's promo lasted longer than the match itself. He got beaten from pillar to post, and it was a squash match. Big Cass had zero remorse over his actions, and it served as a warning to others. Hell, he even said that he's going to be the Universal Champion. All of a sudden, Big Show interrupted. They brawl, and Cass makes a run for it. This marked the start of the feud between the two. Enzo, meanwhile, felt that you should fight for what you believe in. He refused to give in and give up. Every time he gets knocked down, he gets back up. Cass interrupts. He blames Corey for this and tells Enzo to shut his mouth. Enzo goaded him into a fight and brought out the Big Show. He takes a beating while Omori watches on, and even then, he retaliated and left Big Show laying. Big mistake for the Certified G. The rematch was the same story, except this time Big Show came out after the match. It didn't end well for him, and this led to a match between the two. It was Enzo and Cass' second main event in the summer, and their first came with the segment where Angle revealed the attacker. And this was all building to a huge match between the Big Show and Big Cass at SummerSlam. But here though, Cass was starting to learn that the Big Show was no joke, and he demanded the match. But here, he wanted Enzo Amore away. Angle got the idea of him being locked in a shark cage, and Cass agreed. Now what's cool about Big Cass at the time is that he had massive heat. Here, they refused to let him talk for even a second initially. He expressed displeasure over Enzo befriending the Big Show and said that he's nothing without somebody to help him. Backstage, he needs someone to help after he pisses somebody off. This cage is going to give him a bird's eye view of what he's capable of. Enzo comes out, makes a joke out of Cass as expected, and it proved his point. He's all talk. Big Show though came on just as he's about to attack. Anderson and Gales come in, and the numbers got to him, and Cass shut the cage door right onto Big Show's hand. The image of Enzo standing above everyone is so goofy. He ended up escaping but got booted, and Big Cass won the match. Ironically, the feud between the two brothers came to an end in Brooklyn. They had a Brooklyn street fight, and Enzo was still emotional over Big Cass breaking him and his family's hearts, then said that it's gonna end. The match had a sudden ending due to Big Cass suffering a broken leg. He tried to continue the match, but it was becoming more of a problem, and Enzo Amore was victorious. This injury was a huge topic as Enzo went on a bizarre tirade about finishing his match in NXT with an injury, and later on in an interview said that he was upset because that was supposed to be the moment where he fights back with a chair and the fans started cheering him. The feud most likely was going to end here anyways, probably with Big Cass winning because he had a huge push at the time. Enzo went on to 205 Live and had a great cruiserweight run. I would talk about it here, but it's kind of out of place. It deserves its own video. His time as champion was very entertaining and brought a different perspective to the show. However, underlying issues with Enzo Amore were becoming more and more apparent. Sports Illustrated columnist Justin Barrasso reported in August of 2017, and I quote, "Amore is guilty of bringing a series of questionable guests into the locker room. The visitors broke locker room etiquette by filming and taking pictures of the wrestlers. The same week, some stripper called him out. He wanted to bring her home, was only giving out $10 and talking about how he's got it. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is that in the same report, it said that the Raw roster wasn't happy about him tarnishing the image of the brand. Then to top it all off, the Wrestling Observer reported in August 2017, the incident in question, we were told, that broke the camel's back. And this happened some time back, was him talking very loudly on his phone to someone and saying things that those who couldn't help but hear him thought were negative about the business while bragging about how much money he was making from the business to that person. And this led to Roman Reigns kicking him off the tour bus for being annoying. And this drama was making its way to TV. They had the Miz absolutely obliterate Enzo, give him a lesson. He said that when Enzo and Cass were a team, they were selling merch, wrestling on pay-per-views with John Cena, and now he can't keep his mouth shut and he's getting kicked out of locker rooms. He's in the Cruiserweight division because the Raw roster couldn't stand him, and the Miz was so upset with Enzo's potential being squandered. All he cares about is hanging out with third-rate rappers, and he even said, quote, "You're nothing more than a con artist with a couple of catchphrases." It was a wake-up call. And then the sexual assault allegations happened in January of 2018. It was shocking, and I remember he was just on an interview with Corey Graves. Despite his name being cleared, he was released from WWE on January 23rd, 2018. This was due to the fact that he failed to inform them on the ongoing investigation. I legitimately believed he would return, but as the days went by, it was becoming unlikely. I really thought it was like an Emma in 2014 situation where they would reverse the decision, but that didn't happen. As for Big Cass, he returned and feuded with Daniel Bryan. His issues backstage weren't on the same level as Enzo, but it was still bad, and to make matters worse, he disobeyed direct orders from Vince and assaulted the fake Daniel Bryan. He lost the feud and got released. Overall, Enzo Amore and Big Cass should have stayed together. That's what was best for them in the moment. Afterwards, Enzo did become the Cruiserweight champion, but there was far too much happening backstage. His charisma and talented mic skills made him a standout in the WWE roster for sure. He was top 5 most charismatic. Vince loved him. He understood it. Vince loved him. But at the same time, the man was hurting himself. It also doesn't help that he invaded Survivor Series later that year. There was some goofy stuff that ruined his name. I personally believe if it wasn't for Survivor Series 2018, he would have been back. But the fact that he made so many enemies in his short time, it was bound to end badly. Time away was what was best for him, and it helped him improve himself. Same from Big Cass. They're in much better positions at the moment, and I hope we see Enzo on a bigger stage because charisma and mic skills like that need to be displayed for everyone. So yeah. Alright, what do you guys think of Enzo and Cass? Please comment down below, and that's the first video. Make sure you hit the boot on the like button or perhaps a splash on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.